Usually the lag time between the theory and it being confirmed as fact is like several decades, but things are really speeding up over the last 5 to 10 years.
They're like, they're not going to do anything to us anyway. We're just going to do what we want and then just fucking spin it a little bit.
We have an article here from the New York Post titled, quote, ex-CIA chief spills on how he got spies to write false Hunter Biden laptop letter to help Biden. So just a brief background, Hunter Biden laptop starts to break shortly before the 2020 election in early to mid-October 2020. I believe it was the New York Post who actually published the first story about it, which actually got their Twitter account nuked. More on that in a second. And the reason for the nuking by the various social media sources of the New York Post was that this was just election disinformation. This Hunter Biden situation where Hunter seems to be on the take for political adversaries around the world, but in exchange for getting favors from his then vice president father, Biden, under Obama at the time, basically selling access to his father to these foreign adversaries, that this story was to be swept under the rug. And the way that this was accomplished, and you will hear Twitter execs to this very day excuse themselves for why they nixed the Hunter Biden laptop story before the 2020 election, is because there was this letter written by, I want to say 50, 51, somewhere in that range, intelligence officials, always nameless, faceless. They wrote a letter saying that the Hunter Biden laptop story was a hoax. There was nothing to it. It was just election disinformation, probably tied to the Trump campaign. We can't be really sure, but at all costs, don't share this story because it could sway the election. And this is just the Russians all over again. And this is why this story needs to go away.
Dane, correct me if I'm wrong, but that sounds like voter manipulation. Withholding information that has,
is it, dare I say, election interference
on the election to come? If that's not election interference and it's involving the CIA and social media, that seems a little weird. It seems as though a government agency that's not a government agency but totally is stepped in, much like they do in foreign countries, to elect the president that they would like to see in office, and make sure the person that they oppose is gaslit, run out of town, only ever gets bad publicity, yada, yada, yada. It seems as though a lot of what the Democrats accused Trump of doing, again, tomorrow's news today on the WMD podcast, it seems as though the Democrats are more than willing to do the things they accuse the Republicans of doing on a near constant basis. Like, come to find out,
doth protest too loudly.
I'm just saying, who smelt it, dealt it, to take it into more, a studious approach. But let's recap. Russians were involved with getting Trump elected. They hacked into social media and they boosted up Trump's numbers and ran hit pieces on Hillary Clinton. That's how he got elected.
It's generally,
and they had a P tape. They had a P tape on Donald. They just couldn't find it.
Yeah.
So 4 years down the road, our own counterterrorism agency, the CIA, gets involved with the social media that was compromised in favor of Trump to hide a computer that has documents of not insider trading, but business dealings
of the son of a former vice president selling access to his father, who was then the favorite to win the 2020 election. Sounds about right.
Who exactly? Who was paying him again?
Ukraine was a big one. I think China was also involved. In terms
are
of
either of those countries the USA?
I don't think so.
And is one of those countries?
I'm not good at archaeology.
And is one of those countries, because I'm going to use bad English because you're not good at archaeology. perhaps one of the biggest opponents of this contiguous United States, that being China.
Yeah, that's what we're told.
So wouldn't that cause like a little consternation within the...
You would think that would be problematic in terms of the allegiances amongst the people that are supposed to be leading us and keeping us safe.
Let's trust our overlord, government officials, and they know best because we're just dumb humans that eat fucking McDonald's and watch late night shows with Jimmy Kimmel.
Yeah. Now, you might be asking, David, all right, who is this slappy that you haven't yet named who made these claims, right? How credible is he? Well, in private sworn testimony, Mike Morrell told the House Judiciary Committee that Anthony Blinken, now Secretary of State, who was at the time a top campaign official in the Biden campaign, he was the senior campaign official. He reached out to Mike Morrell on or before October 17th, 2020, 3 days after the New York Post published an email from the laptop suggesting that Hunter had introduced his Ukrainian business partner to his father, then Vice President Joseph R. Biden. Now, as you know, we were just talking about, election interference and all this kind of stuff, and the left protesting too loudly and all this kind of stuff. Why this is Epstein? I mean, need we even say it? First of all, the CIA as an agency, we'll do that in general, and then we'll talk about the specific guy, the director of the CIA, doing this, and not to mention the fact that Anthony Blinken going from senior campaign official up to Secretary of State, I'm sure there wasn't any quid pro quo there about, hey, listen, you make sure I get elected, Anthony, and I'll make sure you have a cushy, prestigious job within my administration. And it all just happened to work out that way. I guess it was pure coincidence. Often the conspiracy theories surrounding an agency like the CIA, given enough passage of time, as the wise and great Kamala Harris would say,
stay tuned for more,
prove to be conspiracy fact. Now, usually, but Dave and I have made this point before recently, usually the lag time between the theory and it being confirmed as fact is like several decades, but things are really speeding up over the last 5 to 10 years.
They're like, they're not going to do anything to us anyway. We're just going to do what we want and then just fucking spin it a little bit.
Morrell admitting to this less than 3 years after the event actually happened. And yet, to harken back to what Kuxinger was saying about he's apparently very concerned about accountability amongst government officials. How many heads? Let's just take a bet or let's just take a guess. Over under 5 heads are going to roll from this, whether they be CIA operatives, whether they be people in the Biden administration, whether they be, geez, Dane, talk, get some sleep.
Sorry.
Newborn is rough on your life.
Sorry.
Whether it be Biden himself, will he not get reelected because of this clear, blatant election interference and meddling that is now out in the open and tested to in sworn testimony to the House Judiciary Committee? Will anything happen? Over under 5 heads roll. David, go. What's your bet?
Do you know my bet's under?
Oh, yeah.
There's no way. I would like to see one.
If you take the over, you're a fool.
I'd like to see one. Like just one head roll. Just Joe. Like, listen. Again, we brought it up on pretty much on the meme destruction. It's like if any one of us did one of the things that any one of these actors did, we'd be in federal pound me in the ass prison. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. But because these people are again, they're in that airplane, which was the analogy from so long ago. We are nothing to them. They do what they want. And then when they get caught, as long as they're still a part of the cogs that are moving forward and making everybody happy, they just tamp it down, move it on. 3 years down the road, somebody comes out and whistle blows, and then guess what? No, nothing happens. Maybe someday he'll find himself suicided in the middle of a field with a shotgun blast to his chest and an extension cord wrapped around his neck. All I know is, Dane, there's not one damn person I've heard stories that they have over 100 indictments on the Biden family that they're going to hand down, and it ranges from everywhere from bribery to child sex trafficking. And I heard that a year ago. Maybe 6 months ago, maybe 3 months ago. Who knows? Who cares? It's not going to happen. It's all just posturing. All they do is posture. They say we're going to do something, and then they fucking wait until the next advertisement break, and then they're on to the next thing. It's sad. It's like we said before, and I'll say it again. It's disheartening.
Very. And, before we move on to the main part of the show, the sort of smoking gun from this House Judiciary testimony from Morell is, despite the fact that before he received his email from senior campaign official Blinken, now Secretary of State Blinken under President Biden.
Look no further.
Before getting that email, Morell had no intention of writing this letter. Compiling 50 some odd intelligence official signatures to make sure that the social media sites knew which direction the political winds were blowing and what they should do regarding this story, is Morell had this to say about why he organized that letter. Quote, to help Vice President Biden, because I wanted him to win the election. I mean, listen.
Period, full stop, voter and election manipulation. I admit to it. Nothing's going to happen.
There's your smoking gun.
He's like, yeah, I shot those guys in the face. Well,
do something about
it. At least you're honest.
Yeah.
All right, go on about your day. That never happens.
So once again, the conspiracy theory, now conspiracy fact. And I would just like for you, listeners and viewers, to just give David and I the benefit of the doubt. Sometimes we go out on some limbs, but until further notice, you should treat generally the claims made here on this here podcast as true until proven otherwise.
Well, we're trying to tell you the truth, and sometimes we get it wrong, but most of the time...
Absolutely.
And guess what? Guess what we're more than willing to do? When we get it wrong, we'll tell you we got it wrong.
Yeah,
our bad.
Our motivations are to actually uproot and shine a light on this blatant corruption that I think we all know deep down in our hearts is there. If you happen to be on the left and you think it happens to a greater degree or a more insidious degree on the right, and vice versa, but we all kind of know it's there. And we're trying to point it out wherever we can and do it as honestly as possible. And sometimes, yes, that requires a little bit of theorizing, because until we can get an ex-CIA official to admit it blatantly in front of the House Judiciary Committee, we don't have a whole lot to go on, because these guys don't usually run around blabbing their misdeeds until their feet are held to the fire.
These fuckers don't even
this little podcast doesn't have the ability to hold their feet to the fire. So yes, sometimes in advance, when we're giving tomorrow's news today, it requires a little theorizing. But just bear with us and give us the benefit of the doubt, because in the short amount of time that this podcast has existed, it is grotesque how often we have been correct.
We're outperforming your local meteorologist. I tell you that much right now.
We're punching way above our weight class.